This is The Storied Outdoors, a podcast somewhere between Lewis and Tolkien and Lewis and Clark, finding clarity in the stories we tell and the adventures that shape us. Welcome to The Storied Outdoors. My name is Brad Hill, and I'm joined by my pal Brian Gill, and man, we are fired up today to be sitting down with Tyler Sharp. Tyler is the CEO, editor-in-chief, and creative director of the Modern Huntsman. He's a photographer, storyteller, and creative visionary who has dedicated his work to reshaping the way we think about hunting, conservation, and our relationship with the outdoors. Through the Modern Huntsman, he's curated powerful narratives and stunning visuals that explore tradition, wilderness, sustainability, and man, they invite us to see the natural world with deeper reverence and responsibility. Man, I love what you are doing with the Modern Huntsman, and I'm so excited you've taken time to join us today, Tyler. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you. Geez, you made me sound a lot cooler than I actually am. I appreciate that. But no, I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you guys reaching out, and yeah, I just in our exchange so far, thank you so much for just the respect and the appreciation for what we do. And it's conversations like this that help remind me why I put in the long hours and things like that. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Excellent.
Man, as far as publications that are out there right now, y'all have one of the most visually appealing magazines out there on the market. I mean, it just well done, and just thanks for taking the time to spend with us today. And we want to dive in a little bit to that publication. So just kind of off the bat, what was the onus of this? What was the catalyst to start this?
It's sort of I feel like I've gotten this story. I've been able to condense it, but it's kind of a longer journey. But essentially, I grew up in Texas, and then I went to film school in Los Angeles, right? So I went out to LA, I went to film school. And then towards the end of that 4 years before I graduated, randomly ended up getting, just through serendipity or fate, whatever you want to call it, landing a job in Tanzania to be filming hunting. And I was super excited. I'd never been to Africa. Honestly, hadn't been around a lot of hunting growing up, but this is like a dream job. It's like a National Geographic kind of thing, except it was around hunting. But when I told some of my friends in LA what I was going to do, a lot of them had emotional reactions and got upset, or some of them called me names and had this perception of what they thought hunting in Africa was. And understandably, there's a lot of stuff online and in social media, and this was 2006, right? So before Instagram even. And I didn't know how to react because I hadn't been. I didn't know anything about it, so I didn't know how to discuss it or defend myself or anything like that. And so that was kind of my first taste of, let's call it the negative PR that hunting has. Mm-hmm. So graduate, move back to Dallas, sell a bunch of stuff, get all geared up for safari, and then I moved to the bush and lived in the bush for 5 months. And we can dive into a little bit more of that.
Wow.
With some of your other questions about my first experience in Africa. But long story short, put me on this path, became obsessed. It changed my life, and just was trying to find a way to get back to Africa, and ended up working for a couple of individuals and a couple of TV shows on the Outdoor Channel. And I went to 40 countries in 4 years, filming hunting all over the world.
Wow.
And through that process, saw the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? I saw things I liked, things I didn't like, and was figuring it out for myself, right? Mm-hmm. What does the world of big game hunting look like internationally? And I was having these incredible experiences, and all over Africa, Pakistan, Russia, India, Nepal, Mexico, like all these places. But when I was coming back, no one was talking about that. When you go to a convention or you go to a trade show, there's not an outlet for that. There weren't TV shows, there weren't publications, there wasn't films really. It was, mostly about scoring trophies and things like that. And I just, I had a sense of frustration because I wanted to connect with other people about these, let's call it more mystical philosophical, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, connections to hunting and near-death experiences and whatever else. And so that was sort of, there was sort of an underlying frustration there with a lack of, yeah, honestly, I would call it art, right?
Yeah.
Poetry,
No question.
photography, things like that. And there used to be a lot of that back in the day,
Yeah.
right? Famous wildlife paintings and famous authors and all that kind of stuff. And so I just saw I don't want to even call it a market opportunity. I saw it as a creative opportunity because I definitely wasn't thinking of it from a business perspective. I
Yeah.
was thinking of it just of like, I'm a creative and I feel like we should do this. And so there was a couple other people involved in the beginning. And essentially I had the only full-time job that I've had in the last 20 years, was I was a commercial director in Dallas, and they laid me off. They like changed the division. We were a small team, and they're like, we're not gonna do this anymore. So they laid me off, and I was like, all right, well, I guess it's now or never. And so I literally wrote a script for a Kickstarter film. Had my buddy fly out to Montana, where I was at the time, and we shot a trailer, launched a Kickstarter, raised $110,000 or whatever it was, and put this publication together. I had never worked on a magazine before. I had contributed to a lot of other magazines, and obviously I had a whole career as a freelancer, and so I had zero experience. But I just knew what I didn't want to do. I know I didn't want to have certain experiences like I did at other magazines. I didn't want to have traditional advertising. I mean, I'm sure you guys at some point growing up read National Geographic, and at a certain point, you open a National Geographic and the first 10 pages were like erectile dysfunction ads. And you're like, what does this have to do with pathology or anything, right? And so, I felt like there was an opportunity to improve that experience and potentially evolve the business model. And so we launched it. Initially, the first issue didn't have any brand partners or anything. It was just, we had 10 contributors. I paid them all a flat rate, and then they each got 1% of all of the issue sales. We sold 10,000 copies, something like that, sold out. And it was this massive sort of groundswell. And back then, Instagram, this was 2017, I think. You could actually like start growing a following on Instagram, for all the algorithm stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we had all this sort of momentum, and it was initially sort of based on curating the best photography and perspectives. And one of the other guys involved in the beginning, he wasn't a hunter, and so he was kind of coming at it from a different perspective. But at the end of the day, the goal was to be able to communicate the merits and traditions and culture of hunting in a modern world to potentially, without the exact statistic, like let's call it 80% of the global population that doesn't hunt or isn't anti-hunter, right? And so during a lot of my travels, so my mother's from a very small town in Texas. Her name's Barbie Lee. And I found myself, I'd come home and I was
the most Texas name possible.
Yeah.
I love it.
Her name's Barbie Lee. And I'd be telling Barbie Lee these stories about Pakistan or whatever it was. And she would kind of glaze over a little bit and be like, oh, yeah, that's nice, And it wasn't, I was maybe using the names of the tribe or whatever it was. And it's not a place she had been. She hasn't traveled a lot. And it made me realize, and I say this every time, I don't remember who the quote is from, but someone famous. Let's say it's maybe Aristotle or Plato or someone like that. But it's, what good is wisdom if the common person can't understand it, right? And so I don't really agree with a lot of the highbrow, confusing, hard to understand things, because you lose part of the captive audience. And in this case, we're trying to talk to a broader, more mainstream group of people. And so I found myself starting to tell stories in a way that were distilled into a pure form that someone could more easily connect and relate to, even if they hadn't traveled internationally. So all of that to say, that international experience, my experience with other publications and other brands, and then being forced to learn how to communicate how hunting deserves to stay relevant in a modern world. That all that together sort of is what led to the creation of Modern Huntsman.
Man, I love that, man. There's an awful lot in there to unpack. And
yeah, we can stay on that first question just for the rest of the podcast.
yeah.
For sure. What I do love about what you're doing is it blends a whole bunch of things. It's not just stories, but it blends art, conservation, food, all of these things into like sort of a cohesive experience. So where did that come from? Like bringing all those together? It's because it's more than just. And let me tell this story about this hunt I went on in Pakistan.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you eat when you're in Pakistan? So some of that started to infiltrate these stories and become part of this publication. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that it probably started through my initial curiosity, right? I'm kind of a chameleon, right? I've lived a lot of different lives in different places. I have a lot of different interests, and some of that maybe doesn't make sense like it should fit together, but it always has for me. And I think that part of it probably started to span out of when I was traveling a lot internationally, and I would be in these traditional hunting camps or whatever it was. I kind of started to get bored because in a lot of cases it was hunters there to hunt, and the dinner conversation was around other stuff they had hunted, right? And at a certain point, after 4 years, right, when that's your just like every job, right, you just like you start to get a little like stir crazy. And so I started to find myself spending more time with the locals or trying to learn the language or like going in the kitchen and hanging out with those guys. And because in a lot of cases, I was ended up kind of embedded in these locations for a while. So I learned Swahili, learned Swahili, and then would learn from the trackers. And like I felt like I became a hunter through learning from these guys. And so I think that initial curiosity is probably what started that. And then as I started to tell people those stories, they'd say, "Oh, that's really interesting. Maybe you should write about that or whatever it is."
Mm.
And so in the beginning, we didn't have a big budget. So, well, we still don't, but we had no budget back then. And so I found myself pulling from my archives a lot and from my experiences to put in the magazine.
Right.
And the reaction, obviously, to that and people's interest in, hey, well, I'd like to hear more, or maybe I want to go there. And that eventually led to us starting to host experiences and dinners. And, it was kind of funny because people would be like, hey, why do you guys get to have all the fun? We want to meet Jesse Griffiths, or we want to meet Sarah Glover, or whoever it is. And so, yeah, it just, I have I think I have a pretty eclectic group of characters that I've collected throughout my lifetime, all deserving of their own books. And so, yeah, I think it was kind of about putting that together in a way. And I think that over the last 8 years, it's really helped me realize that ultimately, like I'm a curator, right?
Mm.
And whether that's photography or writing or a chef dinner or brand partnerships, or pick one, but that's something that I really am passionate about. And I sort of shifted our mission statement in the last maybe 2 issues. I read a quote from Edith Wharton, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, I think in the 20s or 30s. And she wrote, it was a quote that said, "There's two ways to be the light. You can either be the candle itself or the mirror that reflects it." And that really hit me hard because there's a lot of just unnecessary divisiveness in the hunting industry and tribalism and factionalism. And I wear this brand and I wear that camo and I shoot traditional bow and I shoot like, who cares? And there wasn't enough about the common ground, right? And the virtue and the beauty and the art and the things we all like. And so I just decided to pivot away or pivot towards that, right? And so whether it's an artist or a hunter or a knife maker or a chef or a conservation director, it's really trying to showcase the best and brightest, right? Good, good things. But at the same time, like with the mirror, sometimes you see things you don't want to see, right? And there's difficult things, there's challenging things. And so I've always tried to not have a tone of like finger pointing or wrist slapping. How do you raise issues and concerns that can maybe inspire all of us to take more responsibility for our impact on a world with limited wild resources, right? An exploding global population and an intentional political divisiveness that's trying to, really for their own gain. And so I think that that was sort of a tangent there, but that's that level of curation with the idea to inspire people to either become a part of it or talk about it, or even if just the one-time inspiration means that they're not going to speak out about hunting or angling whenever it comes to their, ballot box or whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
Man, I love all of that, and it feels like this is just such a. It's more than just a magazine. It's more than just beautiful art and photography and great storytelling. There, the fact that you've got a mission statement and that you've got these things. I mean, these are. It feels like you're going against the grain in a lot of ways, and I really appreciate that. I mean, it feels like it's a return maybe to what some of these earlier magazines and things were. I mean, I remember picking up old copies of fishing magazines, hunting magazines, and it was really great. But then there was a shift when advertising started kind of coming in. It was just all advertising, and I couldn't tell if I was reading an advertisement or if I was reading a story or
Yeah.
What was the movie they filmed down at the beach, Brian, where the guy's life
Truman?
Truman Show, and
Truman?
he doesn't realize he's like always constantly like, look,
advertising brands,
my Yeti cups,
brand placement, exactly. That's what.
Be sure to drink your Ovaltine.
Exactly.
But like, there's this like vibe, basically, or a style to the Modern Huntsman that it's, I don't know, it's like a refinement, or it's an elevated. It's not just about the killing of an animal. It's about the story. And how did that particular style come about? Were there influences? Were there things that you saw that you wanted to return to, or where did that come from?
I was thinking too in this same vein, Brian. This question also, like, from a photography standpoint, a lot of people, like a photographer, will have a certain, like you can download people's, Lightroom like presets or whatever, and so because all their pictures have a similar look. Like I could nerd out from a design standpoint on like how you guys get the look of the Modern Huntsman is very visually appealing. We've said that before. It's stunning. So how in concert with what Brian's asking, this vibe of storytelling and the look of it, how did you guys get there?
Yeah. I mean, we are definitely trying to elevate everything we do across the board. It's a fine line between creating something high quality that isn't perceived as highbrow, right? Especially in the hunting industry. And I've heard every, naysayer or criticism you can think of. And ultimately you have to, I mean, you got to be aware of, public perception and opinion and all that. But at a certain point you realize, you just, make the decision. Is this serving the mission we're on or not? Or is this just someone being a keyboard troll? And so I think that at the end of the day, we've got one life to live. And I feel like, what the hell is the point of doing things or owning things or making things or eating things if they're not good or you don't enjoy them, right? And I feel like and maybe that's cliche, I don't know, but I and our team are really, really passionate about not viewing this as a hunting publication, but we're literally looking at global award-winning media companies, and we don't consider ourselves really even a hunting publication anymore. With some of the firepower we have on our team now, including Marshall McKinney, who was the creative director for Garden and Gun for 18 years. He's on our team now. And so we have all of his experience guiding some of the decisions we're making, and some of the writers and photographers that are coming to the table. When Disney bought Nat Geo, they sort of pivoted away from a lot of the long form storytelling and some of that little bit more documentary style. They cut a lot of that work. And so those people are coming to us, and we've quickly realized that there's not that many outlets left. No. I own the majority of the company. We have a few investors. Chip and Joanna Gaines were our lead investors, and they're on my board. And so we're just had a call with them earlier, right? And we're thinking long term. They have a very traditional publishing background, and so what felt like an uphill battle for years, where people are being like, "What the hell are you doing? This isn't going to work." all these other publications have folded, and we're now in an incredibly unique position where we've pioneered something that no one else has really done,
Mm-hmm.
and are which is exciting but also terrifying because there's no blueprint. And even the people with the most experience are like, yeah, I actually don't know how all this
I don't know.
together. Um, and so I think that um, we're trying to do and say something interesting or unique. And of course that also probably sounds cliche. Most artists are trying to do that. But I think that we've accomplished that in certain ways. We've established a visual standard, right? I think that we continue to push the boundaries of the way the things combine and look and feel, and I've had to, that's one of my biggest journeys, is letting my team take more ownership over things. And so
Oh, yeah.
my design director convinced me that some of the story of our chef feature in volume 14 should be pink. And I was like, no way, And it was with Chef Yia Vang, who is this incredible chef with this amazing story about growing up in a refugee camp in Thailand, and his Lao heritage. He's Hmong, and they have this traditional woven aprons that are brightly colored that represent certain histories and stories. And so it was a color he had picked from the apron, and it was like this bright pink background in the middle of, and I would have, like 5 years ago, I would have told you no way. But there's a purpose to that, right? And there's a design language, there's a philosophy, there's a thoughtfulness to this that goes across everything we do. I mean, even the Instagram post, it's excruciating at times how many
I love the intentionality, though, man.
yeah. And again, I think that's part of it, is like, why, and I think we all love watching TV shows, right? But at a certain point, why? Like, if it's just another entertaining show, is it really adding any sort of value, or is it saying anything unique, or is it just numbing you for 30 minutes at a time so that you forget about, the yard work you got to do or whatever it is? So I think that's another lens we're viewing things through as we expand and get into product development and collaborative things like that. Why are we doing this? Are we just making a hat to sell it? Mm-hmm. And where did it come from? And what was that process? So we're even thinking through that, right? That whole process of, what is the purpose of and ethics and story of that, right? And everything has a story. At least we try for it to be. And so, yeah, I think with that, it's as you go through that process of decision making and curation, you find people who have those stories or who have that intentionality. And I don't know, I feel like at a certain point, I don't want to say it becomes a parody, but my dear friends will make fun of me and be like, "Oh, let me guess, the hat you're developing is this like rare wool dead stock that somebody's grandpa found in their garage, and they brought out the chain stitching machine." I'm like, actually, yeah, this was chain stitched by a girl that I know, blah blah blah. So it's kind of funny in that way, but at the same time, right? You went back to the 1800s and 1900s, and like everything was made that way. Everything was made by hand, and everybody, had more skills than they did now. And I think that's actually why we chose the term modern huntsman, right? The word huntsman is an old world word that meant someone who knew the ways of the woods. They were a diverse individual, right? Warrior king poet kind of thing, right? And I think a lot of that's lost. And then also in a modern world, you say the word hunter, and people have their own opinions about what that is. And so we chose a different word for that specific reason, so that we had something different to point to. Be like, nope, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something different. Right. And then having to obviously create the mythology around that, like what is a huntsman, what is a modern huntsman kind of thing. Because the term huntsman in England in modern days means someone who leads like a fox hunt. And we're like, nope, it's not that. We're not wearing red coats. And
closer though. Let's be real, a little closer.
Yeah. So, I think that's sort of, hopefully I answered the question there, but
No, it was good.
okay.
Yeah, man, that was excellent. I love the intentionality is what really sticks out to me, and just being mission driven in every decision that's being
Yeah.
made, rather than being profit seeking for every nickel and dime you can get. I mean, I know
Yeah.
you guys are trying to turn a profit, but it feels deeper than that.
Yeah, it is. And that was an interesting conversation with investors, right? Bringing in
Yeah,
investors.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And because what we're doing is unique, and I think a lot of people who were looking at what we were doing, it's not the typical deal they look at, but there's also not a lot of exact comparisons, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so in those conversations, in an effort not to waste my own time, learned to quickly weed through who was serious and who wasn't. And if somebody said they were VC, click, just not interested, because that's a different mentality. And I'm not interested in just sourcing the cheapest product we can find
Yeah.
overseas, just because we can.
It changes
Right.
you get those guys in there. It changes the whole dynamic. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
everything has to be profitable, and not,
yeah,
we're very much on the same page with that. And there are some things that are just not that are not efficient,
yeah,
but they're good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there just got to be a reason, what for us, and that's challenging.